Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this Outriders video, I want to share my first impressions and some of my very first thoughts on the game. If you don't know what Outriders is, it is a looter shooter that is by Square Enix. They're known for having story-driven games, Final Fantasy game series, things like that. Outriders does come with a $60 price tag, and so I think that's why it's important that I share my initial thoughts and impressions with you, so you can decide if this is something you want to invest not only your time but your money into as well. If you've played any games like The Division 2, Destiny 2, any types of Borderlands, looter shooter types games, you'll feel at home here with Outriders. It does some really interesting things that I really appreciate, and there's things that I come across that just really make me smile and just really happy to see that a full-priced game can pull it off and be something relatively great. I'm going to try to keep this video short and sweet for you. The timestamps will be down in the description below if there's a certain topic that you're looking for. Let's go ahead and jump in and talk Outriders. The very first thing, and one of the most important things in any action RPG or even a shooter, looter shooter like Outriders, is combat, and that's what I want to talk about first. Combat in Outriders is done pretty well. The game itself plays really smooth, but outside of actual game performance, the combat feels impactful. A lot of the things and a lot of the skills and abilities in the game can really pack a punch. There's 4 different classes you can play: the Pyromancer, the Devastator, the Technomancer, and the Trickster. I've played all 3 of them except for the Trickster, and they're all pretty fun. Right now my main character is the Technomancer. He brings some CC to the battlefield by freezing enemies. One thing that I really appreciate about the combat in Outriders is you fight champion monsters. They have a cast bar when they're going to cast a special ability, and this can actually be interrupted. But what's really cool about it is it does have diminishing returns with your interrupts. So if you interrupt too much, it then starts to resist that effect. And this is displayed to the player right on the heads-up display that's over next to the monster's health bar by a blue circle, and you can see how much time is actually left on that diminished return of your interrupts. It's just great how much information they really provide to you, the player. Another thing in terms of combat I want to talk about real quick is your skills, your character skills. As I mentioned, I'm playing the Technomancer. There's 8 different skills that you can pick from, I believe. You can have 3 equipped at any given time. I've found myself swapping out and testing new abilities, but there's about 2 main abilities I'm really holding on to. One of those is my healing ability, as well as my mortar ability. There's other abilities that are really good, really powerful, and with only having 3 able to be on your bar at one time, you really have to think critically about what are you going to be doing and kind of switch out your loadout based on, because it's going to be different if you're fighting like a boss versus trying to work through trash mobs or whatever it is. So it's really a nice little thing that makes you have to think about your build. You also actually have a class skill tree. This thing's pretty expansive, and I've only gotten about halfway through. It contains minor nodes and then more major nodes that actually impact, like, for example, one of them was my freeze lasts 20% longer, and there's even ones that change the way your skills are. There's a node on there I saw that whenever I freeze an enemy, I also inflict toxin on them. So there's ways to alter your abilities throughout the skill tree as well. One thing that I have, I wouldn't say this is a complaint, but it is part of the game. You can switch your build on the fly, and I noticed myself taking full advantage of this. You can respec without any punishment or anything. You literally go in, hit 2 buttons, you got your points back, and you can reallocate them throughout your skill tree. One last comment on combat here, and this is related to the sponginess of monsters. I've been co-oping a lot with James. He is one of the DMGCREW members. A big shout out to you, and I will have the link actually down to his Twitch channel in the description below. Make sure you drop by, give him a follow, check him out. Super cool dude. But we hit World Tier 8. And some of the monsters became really bullet spongy. Then again, they were heavily armored units, and I don't think either of us had much armor piercing ammo to kind of counteract that. So that could be a whole nother strategy and a whole nother thing that I just have yet to learn about the game. Next up, we have the world. I had gone into Outriders, and I did play the demo, and I'd hoped that it would become a really open world game, kind of like Destiny 2. It's not that at all. In fact, and this shouldn't be a surprise, you should already know this if you've done any research on Outriders, is it's not an MMO or MMO light. The world is yourself unless you invite other players in or join other players. There is also a random matchmaking tool in the game as well, which is super awesome to have. But the world itself, I'm not going to lie here. The first, probably hour or 2, I found myself just kind of, it felt very repetitive. of the world layout. Now, I understand repetitiveness is part of action RPGs and looter games, and that's totally fine. But there's different types, right? You have ones where you're running the exact same map. But what I'm talking about with Outriders was initially, it was, I think the first 2 chapters, it was the same exact layout. It was go to this camp, go do the story mission, find a side quest or 2, continue the story mission, go to the camp, rinse and repeat. We did that for 2 or 3 cycles, and, you know, the world has opened up quite a bit more. I was out exploring with James just this morning and realized there were some little side areas that we had missed with different encounters and stuff. The world itself is really kind of starting to feel alive now. My last comment I want to make on the world is the map itself. There is no actual overlay map. You have a mini map up in the top left. You have a world map that you can interact with in 2 ways. You can go to one of your flags or banners in game to fast travel around the map. If you want to change hub areas or different areas like actual zones on the map, you have to go and talk to the driver Jakob for him to be able to drive your truck to the next area. You can't just open your map and fast travel. You either have to be at the flag or banner or speak to Jakob in order to be able to travel. Initially, I found the map a little bit hard to navigate, but once I spent some time with the game, it was really easy to learn and just understand. And I feel pretty comfortable now with the map and just navigating the world overall. So you know that Outriders is a looter shooter, right? We got to talk about loot. Loot in Outriders, there is no shortage of. There's so many. You have, I think, 4 different rarities. You have common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. I lied, so there's 5 rarities. And I haven't found a legendary yet because I'm pretty unlucky, but the items I have found, once you get up to the blue and purple weapons, that's where the game gets interesting, because the blue weapons come with 1 modifier on them that you can actually scrap that down and take that mod off and use that for crafting, which we'll talk about later. But items themselves, this is my one complaint that I have, I guess, about itemization, is I'm constantly going for that green arrow. You know, the one that has that more gunpowder, that has that more armor, whatever it is. I just want to get that stat up a little bit more. And then I go ahead and I check out what the modifier is. But you also have base stats on the item as well, such as long range or close range. There's different kind of base stats that you can find on items as well. So really, in terms of itemization, I think it's great. There's a lot of options, and I'm constantly having to go through and figure it all out and what items I want to use and to min-max in that regard. I think the itemization is great, and it's definitely exciting to picking up loot. When I very first started the game, I found inventory management to be a little bit of a pain and a little bit annoying. But again, like the maps, once I figured out how it actually works, I've kind of got it down to a really nice cycle now that it just kind of flows now, and I'm actually trying to manage my inventory and sort out my loot. One other thing I want to mention here with items is I mentioned that you can dismantle the items for their modifier, but if you dismantle, you're going to get less materials than if you were to actually just straight up vendor them for scrap, which is the main game's currency. There's other crafting materials in the game that all play into the actual crafting system. I don't want to do a whole crafting guide right here, right now, but I do want to talk to you about crafting and just kind of my thoughts on the system. Crafting is a lot more in depth than I initially thought that it would be. We're going to be talking about the blue items and purple items right now, because those are the 2 kind of primary that I've crafted on. So the blue items, when you get it, like I said, I focus on that green arrow, what's the upgrade, and then if the modifier on it sucks, I can go to the crafter, the main hub, and swap it out for a modifier that I've gotten from another item that I've dismantled. So it's nice to have this bank of modifiers that you've got and that you can just kind of use to craft. And the modifiers themselves are not consumed on use. Once you have the modifier, you have it for good. So if you have a build with modifiers that you like to use, you can literally just go and put that on all your gear and run that build. It does cost materials, but I haven't ran out of materials from doing this method. You can do other things with crafting your items. You can upgrade the rarity. You can upgrade the level of the item up to a certain cap. So let's say you find a level 1 purple item for whatever reason, you can level it up to like 3 and you can't really level it past that. This is so you don't have the same weapon all the way through the game, and so that you're exploring other weapons and items within the game. I think it's great design just in case, you're falling a little behind, need a little bit of a boost, but the material to level up the actual level of the weapon you're using is a little bit more of a rare resource. So I'm a little bit more stingy when it comes to leveling up the gun. Other than that, you can, I think, plus up the attributes using the shards that you get from dismantling other weapons. Just the crafting system, I'm impressed. It's a lot more in depth than I really thought it would be. Just some final thoughts here on Outriders. I got to say, co-op is where it's at here in this game. I've played solo and I've played 2-player. I've played up to 3-player. That's the most you can have in one game at any given time is 3 players. The more players, the easier the game gets, in my opinion, even though it does summon more bad guys out the more players you have. So, we jumped into 3-player and James and I were like, whoa, dude, there's so many more monsters now. But it's just all around great. I went back and helped out someone that just started playing, and so we were playing on a lower level mission, and it still scaled up and was giving me items on par with my level. And so I felt rewarded going back and helping someone out. There's just so many little things in this game that just make it really a gem, in my opinion. For $60, I definitely recommend picking up Outriders if you're a fan of the looter shooter genre. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you've played Destiny, Destiny 2, Division, Division 2, Borderlands, any of those types of games, you'll feel right at home here. And they do a lot of things really, really well. I haven't got to the end game yet, so these impressions, of course, are based on how far I've made it in the story. I think I'm level 17 or 18, and I'm currently working on World Tier 8. I believe the character level cap is 30, and the World Tier cap is level 15, which World Tier is a whole nother thing that I could talk about real quick. While you're going out and killing monsters, you're leveling up this World Tier, and what that does is that's how they increase the difficulty. Now, if you happen to die, you can actually lose World Tier experience. So there is a penalty for dying, and you constantly want to be trying to get this thing up as high as you can. So it adds kind of a dynamic difficulty to the game. I absolutely love this mechanic within Outriders. That's going to wrap it up for this Outriders video. If you're thinking about picking up the game for $60, consider using one of my affiliate links down below. We have a Humble Bundle link as well as a Green Men Gaming link, and you can find all that information down in the description of this video or over on the DMGCREW Discord. If you haven't joined us over there yet, we'd love to have you. We have over 300 members and a small but growing community. I look forward to chatting and gaming with you guys, and thank you so much if you watched this entire video. Just remember, your view means the absolute world to me. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.